Hey guys, Spud here, and today we're making a quick and dirty little video to help all you guys out there who've been having a hard time using the F-14BU's new DTC or data cartridge system, specifically in public multiplayer servers and multiplayer missions. I've been seeing quite a few pilots out there on my Discord and in the forums having a hard time getting their DTCs to work with their Tomcat on their favorite servers. And, well, creating a DTC for any jet in DCS can be a long and complex process. And so when it doesn't work as you were expecting, it can be understandably quite frustrating. And hopefully this video can alleviate some of those pain points for you and get you up and running with the F-14BU Tomcat on your favorite server in no time. If you already know the basics of the DTC menu, or you've watched my previous DTC F-14BU tutorial, please skip ahead to the timestamp on screen here to get you right to the gotcha in the BU that seems to be frustrating everyone. Also guys, before we get started here, more than 70% of my viewers and fans out there aren't actually subscribed to my channel. If you could, that would really help us and the channel out. So let's go ahead and get started here. Okay guys, let's go ahead and get started with going over some issues I've seen quite a few people out there have with the DTC or data cartridge system in the F-14BU Tomcat. So we're here in the multiplayer menu to join a public multiplayer server because I think most of the issues that people are having with the DTC system in the F-14BU is because they are playing on public multiplayer servers. And there are definitely some gotchas in there that can make the process a bit confusing and a bit convoluted at times. So we'll go ahead and join the HIP, or How I Play Games Dynamic Official Server. It is still currently their playtest, and it's rapidly becoming one of my favorite public multiplayer servers out there. So this whole process of creating a DTC cartridge for your F-14BU or any aircraft in DCS can be a bit of a long and complicated process, so we'll try to shorten things up a little bit with the magic of video editing. So, of course, we're going to join the Blue Coalition, and for today, why don't we fly a strike mission from Incirlik Air Base here all the way out to strike Taba Airfield down here by the large reservoir in the northern part of the Syria map. I'm forgetting off the top of my head what this reservoir is actually called in real life, so forgive me for that. So we'll go ahead and click Join here. And what we're going to do is we are going to go for a dynamic slot out of Incirlik here, of course. So we'll go ahead and find Incirlik options here. There we go. For our aircraft type, we're of course going to select an F-14BU. For our livery, why don't we go with my new Royal Daimar Air Force skin for the F-14BU. We'll go ahead and add a loadout to our aircraft. We'll go with some AIM-9 mics, of course, on our shoulders. We'll go with a lantern pod here, some fuel tanks, and we'll go for a AIM-54C Mark 47 Phoenix on our left shoulder station. And then, of course, in the tunnel, we're going to put a host of bombs. We'll go with a couple of GBU-10s. Up front here, and in the back, we're going to go for some additional AIM-54s. And you know what? For the left shoulder station, to make things a little bit more balanced out with the lantern pod, we'll go with an AIM-7 Papa. That's probably going to work out better for us and make for a much easier flight. So next, before we actually spawn into our jet, we're going to create our DTC. So this is where we're going to use the magic of video editing to speed things up for you guys a little bit here. I'm going to create a new DTC file. This is kind of our first gotcha here, is flight plan number 1 is from the mission editor route. These are waypoints that are placed in the mission editor by the maker of the MIS file itself. So if you're doing a dynamic start like we are today, it's obviously not going to work because there's not going to be anything there for you to use. So what we need to do is hit this little drop down bar here and go to Plan 2. Then I highly recommend giving it a name here. So why don't we give it a name of Tomcat Strike? So that way we can easily see things here. I always recommend when you're working in the mission editor or creating DTC files that you always constantly label everything you're creating, so that way you don't lose things or get confused by things later on down the road. Next, let's also give the cartridge itself a new name. So my call sign today is Cabrio11, and let's call it Tomcat Strike. So that way we can easily identify which cartridge we're using once we're actually in the cockpit itself and looking at the 3D model of the cartridge itself. So next, let's go ahead and place some waypoints here. Home plate. So that works perfectly there. We're then going to come down to our plot lines and we'll say plot line, use root as first line here. So that will work for us and give us a nice, beautiful dashed line coming all the way through HSD, repeating our PTID in the back seat. So that way we can see our flight plan even looking at the radar repeater from the back seat from Jester. And then we'll place a couple of additional points here. Let's place a lantern point on top of Tomcat here. We'll place a bullseye point down here on top of our bullseye, so that way we have a good bullseye reference. And our bullseye is just going to be XB. Easy. So because of course on the HIP server we don't have any JDAM points to use, but do keep in mind that all of your pre-planned JDAM targets here and missions are going to be associated with your flight plan as you load the flight plan into your F-14BU, whether in your backseat or going through Jester to do the same. Next we'll come over to our countermeasures. For pilot reactive, we're going to go 5 and 5, 0.25 and 0.25. We'll just leave that there. We're not going to get too fancy with it. And then I'm going to export this DTC. So that way I can super easily reuse this flight plan if I were to say join the server again in the future, or I were to say want to send this DTC to any wingmen who are going to be flying in the server with me. So that way they don't have to recreate all of this stuff by themselves. So we'll call it F-14 DTC HIP Tomcat Strike. We'll save that. Now, crucially, there is one more step we have to do before we jump into our aircraft. We have to hit the load button here to load everything into our aircraft from the DCS side of things. We're now going to close everything up, and we're going to spawn into our aircraft. We are now in our F-14BU. It's a little bit funny that DCS always spawns us into a hangar here, because obviously looking back in the hangar, this hangar is not constructed for starting up two very huge GE F-110 engines inside of it. Okay, so for the idiot test here, we're going to go back to the back seat, and we can see, just like we set up in the DTC menu itself, we now have our DTC is the correct one. It's labeled Cabrio 11 Tomcat Strike, just like the label we gave it, and that really helps keep things from getting a bit confusing. Next, we're going to come to the front seat, and we're going to start up the cold start procedure here. Oh, probably need some ground power and air power here to get everything rolling.
Chief, turn on the ground power. Copy. Chief, connect ground air supply.
Obviously, we can't talk to Jester or Justina in the back seat there without any ground power for the intercom to work.
Ground air supply is now connected.
Okay. So now that we got that, we can go for the startup. And then once you hit startup, you'll see the flight plans you have available to you in the DTC itself. We can see Flight Plan 1 main flight plan is that first flight plan that is created with data from the mission maker, the guy who actually created the MIS file for the server. We do not want to use this one. We want to definitely use Flight Plan 2, Tomcat Strike, the flight plan we just created for our DTC. So we'll go ahead and have Jester select that one. Cool, and once we're there, let's go ahead and finish up the cold start procedure. And boom, there we go. There's our fully aligned INS, and boom, there is our PTID repeater. And we can see that we have our flight plan on there. Let's go ahead and go to ground stabilized, so that way we can see things a little bit better. And why don't we zoom out our PTID repeater here a little bit further.
Okay.
And boom, we can now see our full flight plan all loaded up, out, and ready to go out to strike Tomcat Airfield, just like we put together in the DTC menu before we actually spawn into our aircraft. So the key here, guys, is in your startup procedure, you need to select the appropriate flight plan that you want Jester to load into your jet. So let's go ahead and release this slot at this point, and let's talk about the gotcha that's in there for a hot started F-14 in a multiplayer server. And we're going to spawn in once again, but this time with a hot started F-14BU. So we'll click Insert Look again. Thankfully, the server menu saved our loadout here, even saved our skin selection, which is kind of nice. We'll go to Spawn Hot this time. We're going to open our DTC menu. And it saved our previous DTC here, but if this is your first time coming into the server, you're going to want to probably import the previously created DTC or create your own. To import a DTC file from your saved games, just hit the import button. We're going to go to HIP Tomcat Strike DTC like we saved earlier. We'll go ahead and load that. And going down to Flight Plan 2, we can see, once again, everything is loaded up, ready to go. So we'll go ahead and hit the Load button. We'll close the DTC menu, we'll hit OK, and we'll now spawn into an F-14BU that is hot started. Boom, ready to rock and roll. Now, here is where we run into a big source of frustration for, I think, a lot of pilots who are trying to play on these multiplayer servers. So if we come down and we select our PTID repeater on our HSD, we can see that that flight plan that we created is not loaded into the aircraft, even if we zoom the PTID repeater all the way out like we just did. So what the heck? Where is my flight plan that I just spent a whole bunch of time creating? Well, it's still in the DTC file, and we can see that here by actually zooming onto the DTC cartridge, and we can see, yep, that's the correct label that we created earlier, but we just need to tell Jester to load flight plan number 2. All we need to do is open up the Jester wheel, go to the navigational menu, go to the flight plan submenu, load flight plan, and then load flight plan 2 Tomcat Strike. We'll wait for her to go ahead and load up that new flight plan. And boom, there it goes. There is our flight plan for our Tomcat Strike. And it is loaded into our jet and is set and ready to go. So basically, guys, the big gotcha here that can be very frustrating is you just need to ensure that Jester has the appropriate flight plan selected, whether you're doing a hot start or a cold start. Also, please keep in mind, this applies just the same whether you are hot starting your jet on the ground or you're doing an air start. You'll still have to load the appropriate flight plan even with an air start. So I hope this video helps relieve some of that frustration you guys have been feeling when it comes to the DTC system in the new F-14BU. So if you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and fly safe out there and enjoy this beautiful game. And definitely check out HIP, or How I Play's new multiplayer server that he's put together. It's still in playtest mode, and there's still some bugs in there, but so far it is becoming one of my favorite servers that are publicly available to fly on. So we'll see you in the next one, guys.